Now, a little warning before we begin, there's going to be some major spoilers in this video for the 5th episode of Skeleton Crew, so if you haven't seen it and you don't want anything ruined, it is a really good time to click away. Alright, so I gotta start this out by saying that I think this was the best episode of the series thus far, and also my favorite. This actually felt like a complete episode, in large part because it was around 40 minutes long when you take out the opening and end credits, and felt like it told its own little story, unlike last week where we had the problem of it just being way too short and everything feeling very rushed, and like the whole plot of the episode existed merely to give an excuse for some character growth. And mind you, the character growth was good and actually plays a part in this episode. But on its own, the story that episode presented of the warring clans on a sister planet of Atadton, though it could have been interesting if they had explored a bit more of it, it was very weak and you really weren't given much of a reason to care about the clans or what was actually going on the planet. Again, it was just a framework to give us some character growth. And then when it ended, it felt like, oh, that's it, that's the whole episode. But this week, when this episode ended, I was left wanting more, not because I felt like we were shorted on an episode, but because the episode had me fully invested and intrigued in what was going on and all of the mysteries from Atadton that we learned early on, which we'll talk about in just a moment. And again, it just felt like a very complete and well-made episode. I have very few complaints, if any at all. In fact, I think this was the best episode of the series thus far, and I really, really enjoyed it, unlike last week where I was kind of left a little disappointed. And right away in this episode, we dove back into the mystery of Atadton. We saw that some of the kids' parents, Wim's father and Neil's mother, were kind of plotting a way to get a message off planet or beyond the barrier, I'm assuming to what they think is the Old Republic or whoever they think is out there at this point. And of course, a droid catches them. Wim's father is then taken before the undersecretary to the supervisor, which is also Fern's mother. And it's interesting here because she gave the order for it to erase its memory and to shut down, and the droid did obey. So she does have some authority over them. Now, I'm assuming, if you've been watching my reviews, you know I'm assuming that the supervisor is simply a droid of some kind, and that they are kind of stuck in the past and under the programming of this droid, and that this is obviously a very secret planet. It is one of the jewels of the Old Republic, and now we know why it is so secretive, or we can make a pretty good assumption, and that is because this is where new credits are minted, or should I say Old Republic credits are or were minted and still are minted. Even though, again, it is not the Old Republic anymore, and they don't seem to know that. But anyway, I am assuming that the supervisor is a droid of some kind, and that they are just following programming left over from the Old Republic. They continue to mint new credits, and what they do with them is a mystery. Perhaps they are keeping them in storage until a new Republic, or should I say Old Republic ship comes to pick them up, which never happens anymore. I'm very curious to know what they think is going on in the galaxy right now. Does anybody on Atadton realize that what they're doing probably has become sort of irrelevant? That the whole galaxy out there has changed? That there was the fall of the Republic and Empire and then a new Republic? Do they have any clue whatsoever? And I don't think they do. Again, I think they're just kind of following a laid out program from generations ago when they were a member of the Old Republic. And that is where, again, the credits were minted. Which, yes, was my theory all along. It seemed like the most obvious thing that, well, Wim has these Old Republic credits which look shiny and new, and, well, how would he have those unless they either were still using them or were still minting them? Either way, the parents are simply trying to get a message out, again, either to the Old Republic or to their kids, or probably to both, trying to help them find a way home, because they do know their planet is hidden. They understand that this is not something that would probably be easy to find again. Other than that, we don't really learn much about the mystery of the planet, but it was another carrot, you could say, dangled in front of us to keep us very intrigued and on the hook about what in the heck is going on with Atadton, because I do think, again, there is a lot more going on than we realize, though I do think it'll be as quote-unquote simple as a droid in control just kind of doing a program that is long since obsolete. Another thing I thought this episode did really, really well, and that has been done pretty well for the most part by the series itself, or for the first 5 episodes here, is that it is primarily a kids show. It is aimed at kids, but it is not super, super duper childish. There were a few things in this episode that, just like they went over the heads of the kids in the show, would have gone over the heads of kids watching it and been, I guess, appreciated by an adult or understood by an adult when something like a concubine is mentioned, and the way Jod handles it is pretty cool. We also had some pretty gruesome deaths in this episode. Now, we don't actually see them, but we do know a guy got impaled by spikes on the ceiling because of the repulsor lift thing, as well as the room filling up with acid and killing who knows how many pirates. That's all pretty harsh stuff. Now, it isn't shown, but it is more than implied. We know it happened. So it is nice that, again, it is definitely a kid show, but it does have things in there that, well, don't make it, again, too childish, and that if you are an adult, you are picking up perhaps on things that kids aren't, and it is walking that fine line very nicely. I also have to say that Jod Wood, or whatever his name might be, we learned another alias this week, that he also has gone by the name Dash Zenton. But I think Jod Wood, played by, of course, Jude Law, stole the show in this episode. He is a fantastic actor, obviously, and he is really elevating this show. The kids have done a fantastic job too, but this was, again, really his time to shine. I think this was really a Jod episode. We learned he was probably a Jedi, or not necessarily a Jedi, but I'm thinking he was probably a youngling. Maybe he was a Padawan. At one point, he spoke of attachments and how you basically just have to get rid of them, which he, yes, would have learned from the Jedi. He also said, your focus determines your reality, which we know is a Jedi saying. We have heard Qui-Gon say that to Anakin, for example. And just the way he didn't know how to deal with Wim when he found him crying and kind of wanted to just leave him there. It implies that he, when he was younger, probably didn't get much sympathy when he was having issues. And, I really think this is a way to perhaps subtly and with a little more nuance ask the question of, is it really a good idea for Jedi to take kids at such a young age and to try and train them? Now, I'm not trying to say I don't think that is the case. I think the Jedi do what they feel is best, and it is what is best for the galaxy. I think we could get into a really long discussion here. But you do see what happens when someone is trained at a young age, assuming that he was trained at some point as a Jedi or to become a Jedi. And what happens when something goes wrong and they leave the order and they kind of become, well, detached because they were trained to be detached. Again, this is a subtle way to look at the question of, is the Jedi way the right way? Is the way they train children at a very young age and, in a sense, indoctrinate them in the Jedi way? Is that a good thing? This is how you, again, ask questions about the Jedi Order without just overtly making them bad, like, say, in The Acolyte. And speaking of Jod and what this episode did really well, I thought, there was some real tension there at the end of the episode when we waited on Jod to see what he was going to do after learning what Atadton really was, that it mints old Republic credits, which are extremely valuable. That was again reiterated in the episode when he was essentially bribing the employee of this establishment to get himself a room. But there was a part of me when we waited for his decision that thought, well, he has been loyal to the kids so far, so he's going to remain loyal to them. But then there was another part of me that said, well, maybe he's just been looking for the right time and place to kind of betray them, because obviously he has known all along he could challenge Fern for the captainship of the Onyx Cinder, which we learn is the name of the ship in this episode, even though we already knew that name from the Lego set, but whatever. It doesn't have any real meaning to us, so not like it spoiled anything. But he could have done that at any point, and he waited because, well, he needed to decide if he wanted to help the kids get home and maybe get some sort of reward, or if he wanted to take them captive and essentially get a ransom. And when he found out that this planet is apparently still minting old Republic credits, he decided he would rather try to get a ransom than a reward, which he again did by challenging Fern to combat, which she didn't want to yield. And why would she, after last week's episode where we saw how she understood what it meant to be the captain of that ship. She understood that she had their lives in her hands. So it was hard for her to say, I'm going to yield and give that up. I'm going to let you take the lives of my friends in your hands and do who knows what with them because you seem like you're about to betray us, or that you are betraying us. So that was a hard decision for her to make. I really liked that whole scene. That whole sequence was really good. From Jod's hesitation and trying to figure out what he was going to do, to Fern's reaction and how she held out as long as she could, to Wim grabbing the lightsaber we all knew he was going to grab and turning it on upside down and failing to be the hero. I thought that was perfect as well. Again, all around a very good sequence and a very good episode. I also found it very curious that we did not get to see the face of the old pirate captain, the renowned pirate captain, Tech Renaud. You have to wonder if there is a very good reason for that, though I don't know what keeping his face from us would accomplish if we don't know, or if he's not a character we know from elsewhere, which it doesn't seem like he would be. I mean, where else would we know a pirate that came from hundreds of years in the past, potentially? Depends on when exactly he crashed on Atadton. But it is interesting to note that we didn't see his face, so who knows? Is he somehow a character we have seen before, either in this show subtly that we missed, or somewhere else? I don't know, maybe. But you don't just keep the face from us unless there is a pretty good reason in story to do it, unless they just want to try to make it more mysterious, which, well, it worked. So yeah, this was a very, very good episode. It added to the intrigue. The mystery of Atadton was added to. We had a nice touch of humor here and there. We had the good ending scene with Jod and what he was going to decide and what Fern was going to do or how the kids were going to respond. We had some cool little cameos or Easter eggs. We had a hut in there at one point. We also had a mention of Scipio. We had a few other little cool things in there here and there, which are always kind of fun and appreciated. And most importantly, I am excited for next week. This ended in a way where I really want to see the next episode, and I'm very excited for the next 3 episodes. I'm very surprised at how much I am enjoying this show. Again, I thought there was a little hiccup in the road last week, mainly because it was just too short, and you could have done a little more with it, which this episode did. This episode is like what last week's episode should have been. A little longer, a little more meat on the bones when it comes to the episode itself, and I think it would have been a really good episode last week. But yeah, best episode so far, and very much looking forward to more. Well, I think that's going to be all I got for you this time then. So now it is your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you thought of this 5th episode. Is it your favorite? Is it the best? Or am I crazy? Whatever the case may be, leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.